My name's Eli. And I've always had a thing for tools. Not flashy gadgets. Not overpriced drills with Bluetooth connectivity. I'm talking about real tools, the kind with stories baked into the rust, that smell like old oil and hard work, and that live in a dented red Craftsman toolbox I inherited from my grandpa when I was 15. That box was my pride. It had a name, not legally obviously, but I called it Clara. Why? Because Clara was reliable. Clara didn't judge me. Clara didn't ask what my SAT score was or whether I was still fixing sinks like a dropout. Clara just waited quietly, filled with pliers and wrenches, ready for me to make something work. That toolbox raised me, in a way my family never did. Now, about that family. My sister Marissa? She was the golden child. Always had been. Valedictorian, student council president, went to some out-of-state university with buildings named after donors who probably had yachts named after their dogs. She majored in communications and minored in smug. Our parents treated her like she was the second coming of Marie Curie, Oprah, and Beyoncé all rolled into one. Me? I was good with my hands. That phrase again. Every Thanksgiving, every barbecue, it came out in some variation. Oh, Eli? He's good with his hands. Eli fixed our garage door last week. Saved us $300. He's still finding his path. You know. With his tools. It was like a curse wrapped in fake admiration. The truth? I didn't go to college. Couldn't afford it. Didn't want to take on the kind of debt that makes your pillow scream at night. So I started working right out of high school. First for a plumbing company, then doing odd jobs, sinks, drywall, tile, even some electric work once I got certified. It was hard, dirty, real work. And I liked it. But to my family, I was background noise. The guy you call when your faucet hisses but never when there's champagne to pour. The incident, the toolbox funeral, as I now call it, happened on a random Sunday afternoon. I'd just gotten back from a rough job replacing a rotted subfloor in a bathroom that smelled like despair and broken marriages. I was sweaty, sore, and still thinking about whether I'd overcharged the guy when I walked into my mom's garage, where I used to store Clara, tucked behind the paint cans and that one broken elliptical machine no one used. But Clara was gone. At first, I thought maybe someone moved her. Maybe she'd been relocated to the shed, or maybe my dad needed a wrench and just forgot to tell me. Then I saw the trash bags. 3 of them. One open, revealing the unmistakable glint of old metal mixed with dried leaves and cardboard. And there on top? My wrench. The one with my initials carved on the grip. Bent from fixing Mrs. Callahan's nightmare of a shower valve. I was still standing there when Marissa strolled in wearing yoga pants and sunglasses, holding a smoothie like she was auditioning for a spin-off of The Real Housewives of Suburban Judgment. Oh, she said, noticing the trash bag. Yeah, I threw that out. You what? Those tools. They were ancient. Covered in grease. Honestly, they looked like something from a hoarder documentary. You should have thanked me. You need to focus on getting a real job anyway. She sipped her smoothie like she hadn't just committed murder. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. I just nodded. That's something you learn when you're the disappointment in the family. You stop reacting. Because your rage will always be painted as an overreaction, and your pain will always be seen as weakness. Instead, I drove home. Got a pizza. Sat on the couch with grease under my nails and stared at a blank wall for 20 minutes. Then I opened Craigslist. Next morning, I showed up at an estate sale and bought an entire set of used tools, not Clara, but cousins maybe. Then I went to work. Harder than ever. If Marissa wanted to bury Clara, then I'd build something bigger on the grave. For the next 6 months, I worked like a man possessed. No days off. No complaints. Just jobs, lots of them. Toilet replacements, roof patching, even rewiring half a duplex after a raccoon with a grudge got into the attic. I kept saying yes to everything. Not because I had something to prove. Okay, fine, because I had everything to prove. I was tired of being the cautionary tale at family dinners. Tired of being just Eli, the guy with a wrench. I wanted to be more. I wanted to own something, not just a busted-up van and a set of used tools, but a future that didn't rely on anyone else's approval. That's when I got the call from old Mr. Roscoe. He ran a small hardware store on the edge of town, the kind with flickering lights and a bell that rang when you walked in, even if you didn't open the door all the way. He was closing shop after 40 years and wanted to sell the building. Too many chains, he said. Nobody respects a good pair of pliers anymore. I told him I didn't have the money. He said, then don't waste mine. Come back when you do. I went home that night, laid every dollar I had across my kitchen table, tips, folded checks, cash payments from side gigs. I was $14,000 short. So I picked up 2 extra jobs, overnight at a hotel doing maintenance and weekends helping out at a construction site that paid in cash and back paying. My hands were callous, my eyes were red, but every time I wanted to quit, I thought about Clara. And Marissa's voice. You need to get a real job. You ever feel so angry that it keeps you warm in January? By April, I had enough for a down payment. The bank didn't want to approve the loan at first, but my buddy Carlos co-signed after I fixed up his flooded basement for free. Said I had hustle with a hammer. I liked that. So I bought the place. Turned the back into a workshop, the front into a modest storefront. Gutted it all with my own hands except the flooring, that was Joe's specialty. She laid tile like an artist. We used to date, but now we're just complicated. Long story. Anyway, the place came together. I painted the walls. Built my own shelves. Hung a hand-painted sign out front that read, Eli's Repairs and Custom Installs. No frills. Just fixes. And under that? Built from tools you threw away. Okay, maybe that was petty. But it felt good. Real good. And guess who showed up to the grand opening? Not Marissa. Not my parents. But Uncle Gene came. Said he always knew I was a quiet builder, not a loud talker. Then he handed me a 6-pack and said, Don't tell your dad I was here. Classic Gene. Business didn't boom overnight, but it grew. Slowly. People started to trust me. I did clean work, showed up on time, didn't upsell like those flashy chain services. Before long, I had regulars. Then referrals. Then I got my first Yelp review. 5 stars. He fixed my sink and my marriage. Highly recommend. I framed that one. Around that time, I noticed something weird, silence. From my family. They'd stopped calling. Not that they used to call much, but now it was like I didn't exist. I'd officially graduated from black sheep to invisible ghost with a tool belt. I wasn't angry. Honestly, it was peaceful. Until the day Marissa walked into my shop unannounced. Wearing a blazer is too expensive for this zip code. Holding a piece of paper. With a look I hadn't seen since high school, the I need something but won't say it out loud face. Hey Eli, Marissa said, like we just finished brunch and not 2 years of silence. I was behind the counter, elbow deep in a broken shop vac I'd been meaning to fix for weeks. My hands were still stained with grout from that morning's backsplash install, and my back ached in a language only tradespeople understand. I looked up slowly and said, Well, look what the cat passive-aggressively texted. She offered that polished, plastic smile, the kind you get from too many networking mixers and too few genuine conversations. Still charming, I see. I didn't offer her a seat. Not because I was being rude, I literally didn't have one. I turned my old waiting area into a display for custom cabinetry hardware. If you want hospitality, there's a cafe down the street. If you want honesty and stainless steel brackets, you come to me. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. Resume style formatting. Helvetica. Printed on actual resume paper. Of course. Marcus, she began, like I didn't know who her husband was, has found himself in a transitional phase. I raised an eyebrow. Transitional phase? Between roles, she clarified, as if I were too blue-collar to grasp the concept. Corporate layoff. Translation. he got fired and still tells people it was a strategic downsizing. She kept going. He's exploring new opportunities and, well, we thought this place might be a good fit. For now. For now. Like this shop was a temporary layover on the way back to corporate Fantasy Island. He's never done hands-on work, has he? I asked. She gave a tight smile. Not, technically. But he's very coachable. Learns fast. Smart. MBA? Interned in New York. Strong communication skills. So he's good at talking. That'll help when he's explaining why the sink's still leaking. She blinked. Excuse me? I walked around the counter, wiped my hands on a towel, and grabbed one of my backup tool belts, basic canvas, scuffed, a little stained. I laid it on the counter between us like it was a peace offering and not what it was, a reality check wrapped in nylon. If he's serious, this is where he starts. I said. Trainee. Like everyone else. She looked at it like I'd handed her a used diaper. No front desk? Customer interaction? Scheduling? She offered, like she was still shopping the menu. This isn't a call center, I said. It's a shop. If he wants in, he learns to fix things. I pulled a blank name tag from the drawer. Wrote in black marker. Marcus. And underneath. Trainee, Eli's Repairs. She stared at it, lips parted just slightly. He has a degree, she said, quieter now. So do thermometers, I replied. Still gotta stick 'em in something gross to get a real read. Her eyes narrowed. Was that necessary? I dunno, I said. Was throwing away my toolbox necessary? Boom. There it was. The silence that always shows up when the truth lands hard. The memory hung in the air like the smell of paint thinner, sharp, real, uninvited. She looked down, cleared her throat. I thought you were wasting your time. I didn't see this coming. I know, I said. No one ever does until they need a wrench. She hesitated, then reached for the paper she brought, took back the name tag, and clutched the tool belt like it might infect her. I'll talk to him, she muttered. Please do, I said, already walking back to the vac. And tell him, jeans. No khakis. And leave the Bluetooth headset at home. She didn't respond. Just left. And for the first time since Clara's funeral in the trash pile, I didn't feel angry. I felt something else. Ready. Marcus showed up on a Monday. He wore a baby blue polo shirt tucked into beige chinos, with loafers that had never touched dirt, let alone drywall dust. He looked like he was attending a startup pitch meeting, not showing up to scrub baseboards. No gloves, no boots, not even a measuring tape. Just a leather messenger bag. I wish I were kidding, and that slightly dazed look people get when they're no longer in charge of anything. He extended his hand. Eli, man. Appreciate the opportunity. Seriously. I think this is going to be mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial. I just stared at his hand until he slowly pulled it back. Tool belt's on the hook, I said, nodding toward the wall. He grabbed it like it was radioactive. Tried to buckle it around his slim-fit chinos and ended up looking like a kid playing construction worker in a Halloween costume. I handed him work gloves. He asked if they came in vegan leather. I didn't answer. We started simple, restocking shelves, organizing fittings, taping off areas for repainting. Within the first hour, he mislabeled galvanized pipes as shiny silver tubes, dropped a container of screws that rolled across the floor like roaches at a diner inspection, and asked if there was an app that could auto-detect stud positions, because the stud finder beeped. At random. It's reading the nail plates, I said. Also, you're holding it backwards. To his credit, he didn't walk out. But his soul visibly cracked when I handed him a broom and told him to sweep the sawdust. Isn't there like a shop vac? He muttered. Yeah, I said. Right next to your humility. Let me know when you find either. By noon, I took him to a mudroom install at a client's house. Sweet older couple. Gave off golden retriever grandparent energy. The wife kept handing us lemon cookies and the husband insisted on calling Marcus Sport. I had him carry lumber in through the side gate. He tripped on the second plank, nearly fell into the rhododendrons, and asked if we had a cart. "We do," I said. "They're called arms." Once inside, I showed him how to measure and cut trim. I let him try. It was not beautiful. We ended up with one piece 2 inches short, and another shaped like Florida. "You ever work with your hands before?" I asked. "I built a desk once. From a kit. But I think I misread the Swedish." After we finished the install, or rather, after I corrected most of his angles, we packed up. He was breathing like we just finished a CrossFit session. As he leaned against the van, wiping sweat from his brow with his now ruined polo, I tossed him a water bottle. "You coming back tomorrow?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, Yeah, I think I should." That night, back in my one-bedroom apartment, I sat on the edge of my bed, laces still tied, arms sore in that satisfying way. I thought about Marcus. And Marissa. And how strange it was that the same people who once treated me like a walking cautionary tale were now orbiting my world, not to judge, but to survive in it. I looked over at the old pegboard on my wall. Hung dead center was Clara's wrench. The one I fished out of the trash 2 years ago. Bent. Dinged. Still mine. I wasn't gloating. Not really. But I was starting to understand something my family never could. There's dignity in being underestimated. Because when you finally rise, you do it on solid ground they never thought to stand on. By week 2, Marcus stopped tucking in his shirts. He showed up in beat-up sneakers instead of loafers, and his fancy smartwatch mysteriously disappeared. I assumed it either broke from falling into a drywall bucket, or he realized tracking his heartbeat during tile work was just depressing. He was improving, slowly. He still held a hammer like it might explode, and every time I asked him to grab the Phillips, he looked around for a guy named Philip. But he stopped complaining. Mostly. He even started bringing his own lunch. PB&J, crusts cut off. One Thursday, we got called to a job on the west side, a kitchen remodel that was behind schedule because the last contractor bailed halfway through. The homeowner was a real estate agent with zero patience and a tendency to hover. Marcus was quiet on the ride over. He stared out the window like the trees owed him an explanation for his life choices. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just thinking about how this wasn't the plan." "Plans are like drywall," I told him. "They look good until someone punches them." We got to the house around 9 a.m., and the minute we stepped inside, we were met with a problem. One of the joists was rotted. Bad. You could poke it with a screwdriver and watch it crumble like stale cookies. I explained what needed to be done: temporary support, replacing the bad section, and reinforcing with a sister joist. Marcus blinked. "Wait, a what joist?" "Sistering," I said. "It's like giving the weak one a stronger body." "Oh. That's kinda poetic." "Yeah, well, if we mess it up, the fridge goes through the floor." "No pressure." I handed him a circular saw and walked him through the measurements. He nodded. Asked a few questions. Then measured twice like I taught him. I watched from the other side of the kitchen as he made the cut. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't terrible. For a guy who 2 weeks ago thought a stud finder needed batteries, it was progress. But then the homeowner walked in. Arms crossed, eyes skeptical. She looked at Marcus, then at me. "You sure he knows what he's doing?" she asked. Loudly. Marcus froze. His hands tightened around the saw. "He's learning," I said evenly. "And I'm supervising." "Well, I'm just saying, this is my investment property. I can't afford amateur mistakes." Her voice was sharp. Passive-aggressive. Like she was trying to pop a balloon but wanted plausible deniability. Marcus didn't say anything. Didn't look at her. Didn't look at me. Just quietly set the saw down, turned, and walked out the front door. I found him 10 minutes later, sitting on the curb. He wasn't crying, but his jaw was tight. That kind of tight where you're swallowing a lot more than air. "She's right," he muttered. "I don't belong here." I sat down next to him. You think I belonged when I started? I asked. I electrocuted myself with a toaster the first week. Blew a fuse. My eyebrows smoked. He cracked half a smile. But I didn't quit, I said. And neither did you. Until today. He didn't reply. After a minute, I stood up. I'm going back in. You coming? He hesitated. Then slowly stood, brushed the dust off his pants, and nodded. Back inside, I had him drill the new brace in place. The homeowner didn't say another word. By the end of the day, Marcus was quieter than usual. But when I dropped him off, he turned to me and said, "Thanks. I know I've been a pain. And you didn't have to do any of this." I shrugged. Your family. He smiled. That's what Marissa keeps saying. Speaking of. He trailed off. Then added, she wants to come by the shop tomorrow. Said she has something to discuss. That sentence alone gave me heartburn. The next morning, Marissa walked into the shop like she was still the one writing the family narrative. Same blazer. Same sharp heels. Same look of superiority, just lightly dusted with concern to make it palatable. I was elbow deep in a broken garbage disposal when she tapped her French manicure against the counter. Eli. Got a minute? I glanced up. If it's about Marcus, he's in the back organizing drill bits by size. She smirked. Still assigning him grunt work, I see. I wiped my hands on a towel, leaned back against the workbench, and crossed my arms. What do you want, Marissa? She didn't waste time. I've been talking to a friend. He works at a marketing agency. I think he might be able to get Marcus an office job. Something more aligned with his background. I raised a brow. So you're here to rescue him? I'm here to help him. This. She waved vaguely around the shop. Was never supposed to be permanent. That's funny. I said. Because when he clocked out yesterday, he said it felt more real than anything he's done in years. She paused. For a brief second, her facade cracked. Then she straightened. Well, either way, we'll need his last check? And his W-2 if you've processed it already. Oh, I said, turning and grabbing a small envelope from the drawer. You mean this check? The one he refused to cash because he said he hadn't earned it yet? Her lips pressed into a thin line. He told you that? Yep. Right after he fixed the sink on his own. Didn't flood the place. Even remembered the Teflon tape. Marissa folded her arms. So what? He's going to be a handyman now? That's his career pivot? I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her. You know, when you tossed Clara's toolbox, I said slowly, you didn't just throw away tools. You threw away her legacy. Her name was carved in the handle of that ratchet set. I didn't know, she said a little too quickly. You didn't ask. She glanced at the shop walls. At the pegboard. At the faded photo of Clara and me in coveralls, covered in grease and grinning like we just won the lottery with a wrench. She said, voice quieter now. I didn't realize this meant so much. I shrugged. It didn't start out that way. But when you've been tossed out enough, you start building something out of spite. And sometimes, that turns into purpose. She blinked. Is that why you hired Marcus? Out of spite? No, I said. I hired him because he needed a chance. But I gave him the broom first so he could decide if he actually wanted it. There was a beat of silence. Then, faintly, and what if he takes that marketing job? Then I'll wish him well, I said. But not before I hand him a tool belt and let him decide for himself, not you. Her jaw clenched. She was used to making choices for everyone else. She'd built a life on being right and in control. This shop wasn't part of her world. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. You really think he's changing? I looked toward the back room, where I could hear Marcus laughing at a joke from Carlos, probably while sorting bolts. Yeah, I said. But not because of me. Because this place doesn't care who he was. Only who he's willing to become. She nodded once. Then walked out. And for the first time in years, she didn't look like she was walking away from something beneath her. She looked unsure. I liked that better. A week later, Marcus showed up early. Beat me to the shop early. He was out front in a hoodie and paint-streaked jeans, sipping gas station coffee from a cracked thermal mug. His sneakers, the same ones from his first day, looked like they'd been chewed by a belt sander. And he wore them like a badge of honor. "Morning, boss," he said. I narrowed my eyes. "You been here long?" "Since 6:40. The storage shelf was bowing in the middle. I reinforced it with spare brackets." I raised a brow. "You figured that out yourself?" He grinned. "I googled it, but yeah." I gave a slow nod. "The kind you only give when someone's finally earned it, not because of talent, but because they showed up long enough to deserve it." We had a full day ahead, 2 minor fixes, 1 mid-sized HVAC repair, and a deck quote on the west side for a fussy client who'd already cancelled once. I was going to lead the deck consult myself, but something told me this was Marcus's test. "You take the lead," I said in the van. "It's your quote to lose." He blinked. "Wait, seriously? Don't make me change my mind." At the property, he met the client with a firm handshake, asked solid questions, and didn't talk over her. He noticed would rot on a lower beam before I even pointed it out. Took detailed photos. Suggested switching from pressure-treated pine to composite for longer wear, with pricing math that wasn't half bad. I mostly stood back, arms crossed. He wasn't perfect. He still paused a little too long before measuring. Still forgot to write down the color the client wanted for the railing caps. But he was believable. Like a guy who could own this. Back at the shop that night, I stayed behind while he drove the van to get it refueled. I pulled out Clara's box. Still smelled like sawdust and lemon oil. Inside was her old name tag, bent and chipped at the edges, Clara, Master Carpenter, and under it, mine from the early days. Eli, owner/crew/janitor/therapist/cashier. And next to it, a stack of blank name tags. I grabbed one and wrote carefully. Marcus. Lead installer, Eli's repairs. Then I paused. And underneath that, in the smallest writing I could manage, I added. Permanent. He'd never see that part. But I would. When he came back, I handed it to him before he even made it through the door. He looked down at it, then back at me, confused. "I thought I was still a trainee." "You were," I said. "Then you showed up 6 days straight. Didn't break anything. Learned from Carlos. Fixed that warped door without being asked. And this morning you spotted a bowed shelf before I did." He held the name tag like it might fall apart in his hands. "You sure?" "Nope," I said. "But you're about as close as I've ever been." He gave a slow smile. And then, without thinking, he hugged me. Not a one-armed side bro pat. A full, two-handed squeeze like he needed it more than he knew. I didn't flinch. Just clapped him on the back and tried not to let the moment get too weird. "Thank you," he muttered. "For not laughing at me. For giving me a shot. And for not firing me when I dropped that circular saw. You're still on probation for that," I said. "But the hug just bought you 24 more hours." He laughed. Then added, "Marissa still thinks I'll leave. Will you?" I asked. He looked around the shop. At the scuffed floor. At the tool wall, he helped organize. At the rack of blueprints, he'd started labeling without being asked. "I don't think I want to." I nodded. "Then she'll figure it out eventually. And if she didn't? That was her loss. Because this place? This crew? This life she once threw away in a garbage bag? It was working just fine without her permission." 2 weeks later, the doorbell above the shop let out its usual rusty chime. Marissa walked in again. Same heels. Different tone. She wasn't wearing her usual blazer armor. Just jeans, flats, and a windbreaker. And she looked around like she was seeing the place for the first time, not as a sibling, not as someone who once rolled her eyes at my ambition, but as someone who didn't belong. Marcus was tightening brackets on a kitchen drawer slide at the back bench. He glanced up, gave a nod, then went back to work. No performance. No pause. Just working. Marissa watched him for a long moment, then turned to me. I saw the website update, she said quietly. I nodded. New photos. Crew bios. Had time to freshen things up. You put Marcus on the homepage. Yeah. He earned it. She chewed her bottom lip. He leaves at 6 a.m. now. Doesn't come home with complaints anymore. Just stories. I leaned back on my stool. Good stories, I hope. She gave a tiny smile. Usually. He said yesterday a raccoon fell through a ceiling panel mid-repair. I laughed. That one's true. She paused again. Then softer. I was wrong. I tilted my head. About the toolbox. She clarified. About all of it. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I stood, walked to the shelf, and pulled something down, a small box, rough wood, worn lid. Inside, Clara's old ratchet. The one with her initials still barely carved in the side. I handed it to Marissa. This is what you threw away. She held it gently. Like it might crumble. It's heavier than I remember. She murmured. Yeah. Responsibility usually is. She nodded. Didn't try to defend herself. Didn't spin it. Just stood there for a while. Then she looked toward Marcus again. I don't know what changed him. I did. But I didn't say it. Instead, I said, sometimes all someone needs is a chance to hold the right tool. She handed the ratchet back. Then, right before she left, she looked around once more, not with judgment, but maybe something close to admiration. The door shut quietly behind her. Later that night, I was closing up when I noticed Marcus had left his tool belt on the bench. I almost called him. But then I saw something. Tucked in the pouch. A folded-up piece of tape, scribbled with a marker. You'll thank me when you get a real job. He'd saved it. The note she left when she threw out my toolbox. Only now, it was stuffed between wire cutters and a folding ruler, like a scar you learn to live with, not something that defines you. I didn't say anything when I saw it. Just smiled. And flipped the closed sign.